She thought she took my billion-dollar fortune. She sat across from her lawyer with a glass of water and a quiet smile, and she believed, with every confident bone in her brilliant, medical school-educated body, that she had finally seen through me. That the man she had spent 11 years sleeping beside, eating with, building a life with, had finally been cracked open and found hollow. She thought the divorce was the smartest thing she had ever done. She was wrong. My name is Jeffrey Benson. I am the founder and sole owner of Bencor Holdings, a private infrastructure and logistics conglomerate currently valued at approximately $3.7 billion. I have appeared on Forbes' private companies list 3 times. I employ over 4,000 people across 11 states. My wife knew none of this, not because she wasn't sharp enough to find it. Habby is a doctor. She graduated top of her medical school class. She reads people the way most people read billboards, fast, instinctively, and usually correctly. She is one of the most intelligent human beings I have ever known. But intelligence and attention are not the same thing. And somewhere in the middle of our marriage, Habby stopped paying attention to me. So when she walked into my small office on a Tuesday afternoon, placed a divorce envelope on my desk like she was doing me a favor, and left believing she was about to collect half of almost nothing, I let her go. Because I already knew what she didn't. The courtroom would do the rest. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. She came in on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it clearly because I had a gas station sandwich in my hand and a spreadsheet open on my scratched Dell laptop that I genuinely needed to review. Not for the performance, not for the 11-year civilian identity I had been carefully maintaining. I actually needed to review it because even billionaires have ground-level operations that require attention, and I had always believed in staying close to the actual work. The office smelled like old carpet and humble ambition, and I had chosen it precisely for that reason. Habby didn't knock. She walked through that door in her white coat, heels clicking against the linoleum, chin at the particular angle she reserved for moments she had already decided. I had seen that angle before, when she discharged a difficult patient, when she ended a friendship that had run its course, when she made up her mind about anything and needed the world to simply cooperate. She placed the envelope on my desk. "I'm filing on Monday," she said. "I thought you deserved to hear it in person." I looked at the envelope. I looked at her. I took a slow bite of my sandwich. "Okay," I said. Something moved through her face that she didn't intend to show me. She had rehearsed this moment. I could tell by the way her hands were too still at her sides, by the way her breath was slightly too controlled. She had expected tears, maybe begging. At minimum, the satisfying spectacle of a man realizing he was losing something he could not afford to lose. Instead, I was chewing a gas station sandwich and looking at her with the same quiet calm I had worn for 6 weeks. Ever since the night I opened a thin folder on my desk, closed it in 30 seconds, and decided to let this play all the way to its end. "You should probably get a good lawyer," I said. She almost said something. I watched it form and dissolve behind her eyes. Then she turned and walked out, and the door clicked shut behind her, and the office was very quiet. I set down the sandwich. I opened my desk drawer and looked at the single black business card I had placed there 6 weeks ago. No logo, no title, just a name and a number, belonging to a man named Theodore Ashe, the finest matrimonial and corporate attorney in the country, a small, quiet man who wore plain suits and had not lost a case in 19 years. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number from memory because I had never saved it. Some things you carry in your head rather than your contacts because you always knew the day would eventually come. He picked up on the second ring. "It's time," I said. Then I finished my sandwich, and somewhere across the city, my wife was already calling her lawyer, already smiling, already counting money she did not yet know she would never touch. 3 months before she filed those papers, Habby paid for our first date at a restaurant she had chosen because she thought I couldn't afford anywhere nicer. I had reached for the bill, and my card had declined. The silence stretched between us like something fragile. I laughed, said something about a transfer I'd forgotten. She waved it off, paid without ceremony, and squeezed my hand walking to my modest, slightly older car afterward. "I don't care about any of that, you know," she said. I looked at her for a long moment. Something moved through my chest that I hadn't expected, something dangerously close to hope. "I know," I said softly. What she didn't know was that the card decline was deliberate. My financial team had standing instructions to periodically suppress the card linked to my civilian identity. It was a protocol I had built carefully after a woman named Veronica Hale had spent 2 years learning my business well enough to sell its secrets to a competitor the moment I was vulnerable. Veronica had looked at me when I confronted her and said, without flinching, "I was never going to marry someone who might end up with nothing." Abby had just passed the test Veronica created. She didn't know she was being tested at all. The next morning, I made her eggs and bad coffee and watched her eat at my kitchen table, and I thought about the $2.1 million wire confirmation sitting in my other phone. I thought about the 4,000 employees whose livelihoods ran through infrastructure she had never seen. I thought about Veronica's face, that calm, bloodless exit, and I thought about how differently Abby had handled an uncomfortable dinner bill. What I didn't know yet was that 14 months before she filed those papers, Abby had met a cardiovascular surgeon named Roland Voss at a conference in Atlanta. A shared cab, hotel bar, too much wine and too little resistance. I found out on a Wednesday in November. Not dramatically. My security team flagged a location anomaly on a shared account. My head of security, Paulson, placed a thin folder on my desk and said only, "I'm sorry, sir." I opened it, closed it in 30 seconds. Then I went home. Abby was making jollof rice, humming something softly. I set the table. We ate together. She told me hospital gossip. I washed the dishes. I did not cry until the shower. 45 minutes under the water, and not a single sound. What Abby never knew, what she couldn't have known, because I had arranged it so carefully, was that 3 years into her residency, I had quietly paid off her $280,000 in medical school debt. Every dollar of it, routed through a legitimate healthcare worker loan forgiveness foundation that I had been privately funding for years. The letter arrived on official letterhead, federal adjacent language, completely convincing. She called me weeping. "Jeff, I can breathe. I can finally breathe." I was standing in a hallway outside a board meeting with 11 people waiting for me inside. I pressed the phone to my ear and listened to her cry with relief, and I said, "You deserve it. You worked so hard for it." Both things were true. The money was never from a program. It was from me. She never knew. And 4 years into our marriage, when her mother's kidneys began failing in Port Harcourt and Abby quietly started liquidating a small investment account without telling me the full scope of it, I made another call. A compatible donor was located in Houston, flown to Lagos. The surgery was performed at a private facility that had received a sudden anonymous equipment grant. Abby called me from the hospital corridor, barely able to speak. "She's going to be okay," she wept. "Jeff, she's okay." I was in my real office, the executive floor she had never seen. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel of my car and stayed there a long time. She discovered the truth the way most devastating things are discovered. Casually, accidentally, over brunch. Roland had asked the name of my company. Abby said Bencor something, with the light dismissiveness of a woman describing furniture she'd never particularly noticed. Roland typed it into his phone. He stopped mid-sip. He turned the screen toward her. Forbes private companies list. Estimated valuation, $1.4 billion. Founder and CEO, Jeffrey D. Benson. Abby's coffee cup tilted in her hand. A slow drip spread across the white tablecloth. She didn't move, didn't blink. Just stared at the screen while the coffee kept falling, and Roland said her name twice before she heard it. Within 4 days, the shock had calcified into strategy. She walked into the offices of Keller and Associates, the most aggressive divorce firm in the state, sat across from senior partner Diane Keller and said, "My husband is Jeffrey Benson, Bencor Holdings. I want everything I'm legally entitled to." Diane Keller, who rarely smiled, smiled. The discovery subpoenas came fast. My team cooperated immediately, completely, and without resistance, which was the first thing that should have worried Abby. When billionaires cooperate that fast, it means they already know something you don't. Diane called Abby mid-shift. I know this because Theodore told me, and because the sequence of what happened next was something my attorney had anticipated with the precision of a man who had seen human nature fail itself in courtrooms for 19 years. Abby stepped into a hospital supply room to take the call. Diane told her about the prenuptial agreement, the document Jeffrey had called a standard financial disclosure agreement 11 years ago that Abby had skimmed during her second year of residency, exhausted and trusting, and signed without reading closely. The document that contained a single devastating clause. In the event of divorce initiated by Abby due to infidelity, she waived all rights to assets accumulated under Bencor Holdings and its subsidiaries. The document that Jeffrey had quietly, patiently, documented against for 14 months. Photographs, dates, location data, all of it verified and sealed. Diane's voice was careful. He knew, Dr. Benson. He has known for 14 months. Abby slid down the supply room wall. She sat on the floor in her white coat under fluorescent light and stared at the shelving units across from her and understood for the first time that she had not been leaving a struggling man. She had been leaving a man who was watching her go. The courtroom was a theater of imbalance. Abby's team arrived with 53 binders, 8 document boxes, forensic accountants, and the organized energy of people who believed they were winning. I arrived with Theodore Ashe, who carried one file and wore a plain gray suit and nodded pleasantly at opposing counsel the way a surgeon nods before an incision. Theodore let Diane's team present their full reconstruction. The $1.4 billion, the corporate filings. It was thorough and impressive and completely correct. Then Theodore placed a single document before the judge. Bencor Holdings, he said quietly, represents approximately 38% of my client's total assets. Diane Keller said, "Excuse me? The remaining 62% is held across 7 additional entities established between 2009 and 2021, none triggered for disclosure under the terms of the prenuptial agreement." The judge looked at the document. Diane did rapid, terrible mathematics. If Bencor was 38% and worth $1.4 billion, total estate, approximately $3.7 billion. Abby stared at the back of my head. I did not turn around. Then the judge asked me the question that changed everything. She asked why, not legally, just for the record, I had hidden my identity from my wife for the entirety of our marriage, and why I was disclosing everything now in a divorce proceeding. I turned and looked at Abby for the first time since it began. Because I wanted her to know, I said, what she's choosing to walk away from, not the money. The man who loved her without needing her to know he could buy anything in the world, except what she just took from him. After the lunch recess, Abby returned alone. No Diane Keller, no associates, no binders, just herself, in the chair, hands folded. She stood and spoke without notes, in the steady voice doctors learn when the news is hard and the room needs holding together. She said she wasn't contesting the prenuptial agreement. She said she understood what she was walking away from financially, and she accepted it. Then her voice broke, just once, cleanly, as she said that every act of love in those court files, the debt, the donor, the clinic grant she hadn't even known about, was something she had benefited from without a single word of thanks, because she had never known to say it. She sat down. I told Theodore, the house, the car, $2 million, put it in the filing. He looked at me. I didn't look back at her. The papers were signed at 3:47 on a Thursday afternoon. I got into my actual car, sent by my actual driver, no performance left to maintain, and I did not look at the courthouse as we pulled away. Somewhere on those steps I knew Abby was sitting in October light with everything and nothing, finally, completely awake. My mother had told me on my wedding morning that some answers cost too much. She was right. I closed my eyes as the city moved past the window, and I let it go.